Once again, welcome to Chris's Caribbean Delights. And tonight, I'm coming to you with a recipe for some ice blocks. We call it custard blocks or we call it ice blocks, but it's a frozen dessert that's made with lots of creamy milk and custard powder, and it's delicious, it's delectable, it's decadent for that matter. So, and we enjoyed it as kids in the form of frozen little square block. We used to go to the stores and buy it, and my mom made it also several times. She made it like every weekend. She would make them because she knew we loved them so much. So before further ado, let's go to those ingredients and we'll get some custard blocks made and have them frozen, and we'll be enjoying them once they're done. So here are the ingredients for our custard blocks, or ice blocks, or however we want to call them. But it's a lovely, creamy, delicious custard, frozen custard. Here, when was the last time you saw Bird's custard powder? I haven't seen this in a long time. And this is exactly the brand my mother used when she made them. And so I was glad to find that online because I know the texture and what the result is going to be. It's going to be awesome. So here I have 4 heaping tablespoons of custard powder here. I have a cup of water, which I'm going to mix that with. I have 1 can of evaporated milk. I have here a 3/4 cup of sugar. Then I have 2.5 cups of, this is a 2-cup measure, another 1/2 cup of milk have to be added. Whole milk, you need 2.5 cups of whole milk, and I'll also put those measurements in the bottom. Vanilla, about a teaspoon of vanilla, and some grated nutmeg and cinnamon stick. Here we have a condensed milk, a can of condensed milk. And you always have to get a little 1/4 teaspoon of salt just to enhance everything. So, and then obviously we need a pot. And here's the pot over here. I just turn it on. And to my pot, I'll add my evaporated milk first. I first add this can of evaporated milk. Okay, all right, and then we'll go ahead and we'll add the other ingredients, and I'll show you as I do that. So I have my fire on medium heat, medium to low, and I have my evaporated milk in here. We're gonna add 2.5 cups of whole milk. 2.5 cups of whole milk. Just a 1/2 cup. And to the milk, I'll add the cinnamon stick, the grated nutmeg, and we'll let this come to a boil. We'll let this come to a boil, and you just give it a stir to stir everything in. I let those spices infuse the milk. Okay, so let those spices infuse the milk. In the meantime, whilst that's boiling, to the custard powder, you'll add 1 cup of water. I will give this a stir so that it could be incorporated and melted up with the water. And you have to be, well, you have to be careful. It lumps up a lot, so you just have to continuously stir it to make sure that it's all melted in there. You have to give it a really good stir. And whilst you're stirring your custard powder, your milk is getting warmed and you have to keep an eye on that because it's gonna boil up, it's gonna start to rise and all that. So whilst you're doing your custard powder and the milk is warming, you make sure your custard powder does not lump in the bottom. Okay, so we'll give the milk maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and it's going to come to a boil, and we'll check it out. So now the milk is almost coming to a boil, and you just have to keep an eye on it and have it, and just stir it when it starts to rise. And to this pot I added my spice, my cinnamon, nutmeg, and the salt, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt to the milk, to the 2.5 cups of whole milk and the evaporated milk. So we're going to let this come to a boil. It's getting there. Okay, as we can see, it's starting to boil. And it's rising. So you just stir it down, give it a stir, and you let it boil for another minute or so, so that the spices, the nutmeg and the cinnamon stick, can get a chance to infuse the milk. Okay, so you just keep stirring it for a little so that it wouldn't boil all over. That's why I'm using a large pot. It's because if you use a smaller pot, it will boil right over the edges. So we just want to get this, get it infused, get the spices to infuse the milk, the nutmeg and the cinnamon, and you'll get that wonderful flavor. And once that boiled for a minute, then we're going to go ahead and we're going to add our custard powder, and we're going to continue this process. So once your milk has boiled for at least about a minute or so, a couple of minutes, a minute and a half, you'll want to add the custard powder to it. And before you add the custard powder, you have to give it another stir because it settles to the bottom. It just settles to the bottom. That's just how it behaves. So you give it a stir, make sure it's all incorporated into the water, and you add that to the milk. Now this mixture you have to continue. The consistency changes immediately as you put the custard powder in there. Now you lower your fire, lower the heat under the pot, and you let this boil for at least 4 to 5 minutes, because you have to get that custard powder to cook. Give it a chance to cook, and also give it a chance to infuse with the milk and the spices that are in there. And it burns very quickly, so you really have to be careful. But you still need it to cook for at least 4 minutes. So you consistently stir. You will consistently keep stirring it as it's cooking, so that it would not just settle and burn. So we'll do that. We'll cook this for at least 2 or 3 more minutes, because I think I just done at 1 minute here. We'll do that for 3 more minutes, and then we'll be back when we're going to add the rest of the ingredients. So now once we've cooked our custard powder, we add our 3/4 cup of sugar. We'll add our sugar. and you just continuously continue to stir. And let it cook for, once you add the sugar, let it cook for another 30 seconds or a minute. Just continue stirring. Continue stirring. And at this point you add your condensed milk. You want to add the entire can of condensed milk. No wonder we loved it so much, because it was also sweet and everything else, and sweet and creamy. That's why we loved it as kids. You stir that in. Keep stirring your condensed milk in. As it continues to gently boil, you're going to add your vanilla. About a teaspoon of vanilla in there. Stir that vanilla in. It smells awesome. Right, we just continue stirring and let this boil for at least maybe another minute or two, and then we let it cool completely before we pour it into our trays that we're going to prepare for freezing. So we'll just let this go for another couple of minutes. Just continuously stir. It's so sweet and creamy and smooth. Low heat. Just let the heat be pretty low. You don't want anything to burn, because you know these milky things, they even catch to the bottom of the pot, and next thing you know, you're scraping off some burn there. So you go with very low heat all the time. Let it cook through. Oh yeah, it's coming up. Yeah. And you want to hear that sound. It's a sound it makes when it leaves the side of the pot or the bottom of the pot. Yeah, you heard that? Yeah. That's, you know, it's cooking. It's really cooking under there. So that's, you have to keep stirring it. Yeah. Just let it cook for a little bit. Then you start stirring again. See, you barely see the movement. It's so thick. It's so thick you can barely see the movement. So that's why you have to be very careful. And I think we're done. Turn the heat off. Continue stirring. You leave the pot on the heat, on the stove, but just continue stirring. That's after about 2 minutes to the end, after you put your vanilla in and your condensed milk. we set this aside and let it cool. In the meantime, we'll get our trays and have our trays prepared for freezing. So we'll just take this off the stove, take this off the fire, and let it sit. We'll get our trays. Okay, my custard is cooled very nicely, and what I'm going to do, I whisk it for a minute or so to dispel any lumps that might be forming. To dispel any lumps, I just give it a whisk. Just to get it back to that smooth consistency, so there are no lumps in there. Okay, wonderful. Now I'll just, these are my trays. My trays are right here that I have prepared, and I'm going to fill them all, fill the large ones first and then the small ones, and we'll go from there. Okay, to fill your trays, you can use maybe a ladle or a deep spoon like this, and a funnel. It makes the job much easier. So we'll just dip and funnel it in. Funnel is very, very precise. You can spoon it in, whichever is easier. Spoon it in, funnel it in. Cool. So this one is done. Just push that aside, and you bring forward the next one. Or you can pour it into a measuring cup. And just pour from there. So for my honeycomb shells, I decided to pour it into my measurement cup. These are really small. You can do decorating like a decorating. They're really small because you can actually just pour it and then just let it run over into one another and just get it all filled in. take a spatula or something and just smooth it off. Alright. Get a spat. I have a spat over there. Get a spatula. Just smooth it off. Push them over. And get everybody equally filled in. This is cool. Okie doke. Wonderful. I just placed them in the freezer. Once they're frozen, we'll come back to visit the finished product. Here guys, the custard block, or the ice block as we called them when we were kids. It's nice and creamy. It's a decadent dessert. Ooh, it's wonderful. Whoa, the nutmeg, the cinnamon. Oh my goodness. Makes me remember my childhood. Awesome. Thank you guys for watching. Chris's Caribbean Delights coming to you with another decadent dessert. And I hope you'll try this recipe and give me your feedback. You'll enjoy it. I guarantee you that you'll enjoy it. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so that you can get all the other decadent recipes that I'll be uploading. Thank you for your support.